Court did hear oral arguments on enforcement of the president's executive order, but the question really was a broader one. Did the lower courts overstep by blocking President Trump's restrictions on birthright citizenship, which could apply to other issues? In other words, how powerful is one judge? John Sandweg joins us here, top of the hour, the former ICE director, the Obama years, also the former general counsel at the Department of Homeland Security. So I was speaking about it to Joe Khalil, who's our reporter, and he covered this today, and we already put it in that context, which is, in other words, this wasn't all about birthright citizenship. It's basically, hey, Trump's been blocked by a lot of these judges. People talk about judge shopping, and they wanted to go up to the high court and say, enough with these nationwide injunctions where one judge can block you. But the issue they used was birthright citizenship. You wonder if we're ever going to have a real conversation about that, though, in this country.
About birthright citizenship?
Yeah, like for real. Like, is that really going to be something? I mean, or it's just a vehicle, right, today?
Yeah, Connell, I think it's a vehicle in part,
Yeah.
but I think the administration is serious about this. First of all, this has more traditionally been viewed as a fringe theory because, as you know, about 130 years ago, the Supreme Court had looked at this issue and determined that people who are, even if their parents are undocumented or unlawfully present, they are U.S. citizens unless their parents are diplomats or part of an alien, enemy force that's occupying part of the United States. I don't think I just don't think the administration is going to get much traction on the birthright citizenship issue. But you're 100% right. The more important issue is these nationwide injunctions. I just think the only thing I'd point out about those very quickly is this is something that's been really hasn't, I think even the administration said this today, a bipartisan issue. These have been tools that have been used by both sides to limit, President Biden, President Obama, as well as President Trump.
So on the birthright issue, it came up at a back and forth between the Solicitor General and Justice Sotomayor about whether eventually this will be a conversation worth having. First voice is Justice Sotomayor, I believe. Listen.
So finally, once it gets to us after 4 years, you're going to respect that.
Yes, and in addition, we may well respect certain white precedent. The Second Circuit, it just is.
And for 4 years, there are going to be like an untold number of people who, according to all the law that this court has ever made, ought to be citizens who are not being treated as such.
And in the meantime, any of those plaintiffs could have come forward and sought, preliminary injunctive relief.
So is that a reference to what you were saying, that for forever and ever the court has looked at this issue in a certain way, late 1800s?
Yeah, it's a reference actually to both issues, Connell, right? It's the first issue.
Yep.
This is well-settled precedent, at least from Justice Sotomayor's perspective. This is pretty well established. But the secondary question is, if an individual district court judge does not have the authority to enjoin the president, then once the administration, unless they bring an individual lawsuit, which is what the administration's position was, what she's saying is that people are going to be treated not as citizens, despite this Supreme Court precedent, unless and until the case makes it all the way back to the Supreme Court. So I think both sides, both the conservative justices and the liberal justices, recognize the challenges because this is a bipartisan problem. I think one of the justices even talked about, what if a Democrat president tries to take away everyone's guns, right? Can an individual district court judge then stop them? So again, it's a thorny problem, and I think that's why we saw most of the time today was spent on this nationwide injunction issue and less on the actual birthright question.
Right, because if they ruled in favor of the government here, or the administration, that could be a big win, because you think about all these cases. I mean, that's been kind of case by case, right?
It would upend immigration law in this country.
Right.
I mean, there are millions of people who are citizens in this country who were born to people who were not, who are undocumented, and they were physically born in the United States. Look, I understand that. I know the president's been tweeting about this and saying we're suckers. It is an interesting thing. I mean, this is something that we see in the Americas, in North America and South America. In Europe, they do it differently. But of course, we are a nation that was built on immigrants, and I think that's why, the framers put this, or when the 14th Amendment, was passed, right? This provision was added.
And then challenged in a key Supreme Court case not long after that, in the late 1800s, right after the 14th Amendment was ratified.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.